Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 5 of the Ethereal Elevated podcast. Thank you once again for joining. If you're new to this channel, my name is Krystal, and it is my goal with this podcast to combine the worlds of cannabis and spirituality. They seem as though they are two completely different subjects, but in my opinion, and as I have been talking about, and as I will continue to talk about on all my socials and on this podcast, the two do commingle very well. So I'm excited for you to be here. I'm excited for you to learn with us. And like I said, to the OG followers, welcome back. Today's episode is about shadow work. Like I said, each week I do try to trade off on talking about cannabis and then the next week talking about spirituality. So today we are focused on shadow work. So the last spiritual episode that we had was talking about the very beginning stage, which is your spiritual awakening. If you haven't yet listened to that episode, I highly recommend. I did break down a spiritual awakening into some stages that I feel, and from research and from speaking to all my mystic friends, that I feel that people do go through, when they have their spiritual awakening. So it's quantifiable. These are steps that if you find yourself being like, oh, I think I'm having a spiritual awakening, or I just think that things in my life are changing. Like I said, I'm always going to also talk to the people who are just not about the woo-woo stuff, put it in normal language. You feel as though your life is changing, and that episode helps you to identify those stages as well as just the next steps. So in these subsequent episodes, it is going to be my duty, because I don't want anybody to suffer the way I have suffered. I do feel as though, there's lots of people on Twitter, but how many people have a podcast talking about spiritual awakenings and how also you can incorporate cannabis into all of this? But anyways, mini little tangent done. The purpose of this episode is to kind of talk about what comes next after that spiritual awakening. You realize, you recognize, you have acknowledged the fact that your life is different. It's probably never going to be the same again. You are awakening. You are waking up to the ways in which you might be keeping yourself stuck, the ways in which the relationships you have in your life might be keeping yourself stuck, the environments, the circumstances, all of these things. And you are now learning to let go. So that is where today's topic comes in. So, shadow work. After you, like I said, after you wake up, after you've realized all of these things, now comes the time to really go within the depths of yourself and kind of clear out that overgrowth that has been happening in your garden. And that's essentially what shadow work is. So today I don't have any notes. I am just going to speak from my heart and my experience, especially as a shadow worker. I am a shadow worker. In case you don't know, there is like a few different types of workers. I do feel as though a shadow worker falls under the umbrella of a light worker. So there are a whole bunch of people that are in this world. There are a select few that are considered to be light workers, shadow workers, just people who helped the general collective raise their vibration and, like I said, go through these things in life and help to guide us. And help to guide them. We are guides to the collective. I personally feel as though like I have been here many times before in this earth. So, it's taken a lot of lifetimes for me to get up to this point. And so I help other people who are just, the first time that they're awakening to spirituality and awakening, like I said, to all the toxicity in their life. I help those people specifically go to the depths within themselves as a shadow worker. As a light worker, not the light workers are all light and love all the time, but they are pretty much the ones to raise the vibration, to keep everything light, to transmute for the collective, which essentially means, anything crazy that you are feeling, it is their job to help you work through it, to hold the energy, to hold the space, and that is what they're there for. Me, I'm going to contribute to the chaos. I am going to contribute to, not in a bad way either. I am here to contribute to you, like I said, going into the depths of yourself, to meeting your shadows, and to shedding light on them. Because if there's anything I have realized, and I got told this probably at the very beginning of my journey, I had my very first phone reading with someone. I'm really blanking on her name, but she told me, you're not a light worker, like you're a shadow worker. And I was like, interesting. At that point, I didn't even know what that meant. But like I said, as I've had my awakening and as I've gone through all of this, I absolutely recognize the fact that I am here to help you go to the depths of yourself. I am Scorpio rising. I am an Aquarius sun. I have a Pisces Venus. I'm just very like intuitive overall, but I do actually enjoy, with myself and even with others, like really finding out about you, about the deepest parts of yourself that you don't show other people, because that is the real us. Those are the parts that are the most vulnerable. And in my personal opinion, those are the parts that are the most beautiful. So I help, my job here in this lifetime on this earth, and especially as a twin flame, I do this in tandem with my twin. I'm not sure he's even awakened to the fact that he's also a twin, but that's another thing for another day, which I will get to in a few episodes. But yes, that is the journey, that is the mission that I have here on this earth. So, like I said, it is going to be our focus today, the subject of focus. Anyways, sorry, that was a very long, well, not super long, but that was a long introduction. So let's just get into what shadow work even is. Like I said, and I'll speak from personal experience, of course, after I had my awakening, after I basically saw my foundation crumbling away, shadow work was kind of like that process of inspecting everything. Like, okay, my foundation crumbled. It's because this over here, this relationship was faulty. It's because I had some childhood traumas that were a part of this foundation. I had core beliefs that were a part of this foundation that weren't even, they did not resonate with me. They were not who I was at my very core. So shadow work is kind of like that inspection, that introspection. You go within yourself. For many people, it will act kind of like as a cocoon stage. You won't want to be around people at all. You have close friends, and as you're inspecting everything, you might have had a bad friendship with somebody. And even if you have a close friend that you can always rely on, you still might need to take that space from them. It is that stage of really looking within and seeing, okay, what do I have to do now to build up a new foundation? And even before that, even thinking about how to build up a new foundation, it really is just seeing like, okay, what even contributed to the fact that I am here now today in a place where it's not ideal to me. I don't want to be in this place. It's not serving me. It's not serving my highest self. I feel as though I wear a mask. I feel as though it is just not where I really want to be. It's not my deepest desire. It's just inspecting that and asking yourself, okay, why is that? How did I end up here? Why did I end up here? All those good things. And I will say it is, when you're doing shadow work, you're going to realize that one of the most important things that I always say about shadow work, about awakening in general, about the general human experience, is when I feel as though, and it might be controversial, but everybody is entitled to their own opinions, but I feel as though there might come a time in everybody's life when they realize that they aren't acting from their true self, that they might be acting like a terrible person, that they might have terrible views on life and terrible opinions of other people that, were taken from people in their childhood. And like I said, these core beliefs that were put onto us that are not even ours. In my opinion, a lot of our behaviors, a lot of the reason why we are the way we are today is because of the people who took care of us, the people who we surrounded ourselves, or the people who were around us in childhood, because it's not all the time that we purposely and intentionally surrounded ourselves with certain people. We are a product of our environments, of the people who helped raise us. So of course, when we're children, we are sponges. We're soaking everything up. We don't have the intellectual nor the emotional bandwidth just yet to really decide, okay, like, this is right for me. We have adults in our life, adults that we trust, that are saying this is the right thing to do. However, we feel it in our, in our gut, in our intuition, that it isn't the right thing to do. And as children, even in a society as a whole, we are taught to just squish that down, to not even think about it, to not even consider what we feel is right, because children don't know anything, right? I personally knew from a very young age, I knew what I knew. I don't really know how I knew it, but I knew that it wasn't right. But there were still people in my life that were just like, don't worry about that. Like, this is the right way to go. Anyways, all that to say, like, our childhood greatly shaped how we are today. And I do feel as though there comes a point in pretty much everyone's life, even if it's just a fleeting moment, there comes a point where you're just like, ooh, like, is this even mine? Like, are these thoughts even mine? Are these opinions even mine? Is this the way I want to live my life? And some people, they might even say, no, it's not the way I want to live my life. Or they might say, it's okay. It's paying the bills, or it's like, it's keeping me not content, like complacent, like, in a place there where they don't really feel like there's a lot of movement. So basically, the answers to these questions will always be different depending, going from person to person. But I do feel as though there comes a point where everybody kind of wakes up at least just once. This moment then translates to very few people actually taking the initiative in their own life to change it. And that's not to like demonize anybody at all, because I'm about to say, after going through the healing, I'm still, I'm still healing till this day, and I will continue to heal. As I am still healing, I know that this shit is hard, and there are a lot of people that just can't face themselves because they don't want to, or can't face themselves because they haven't even been taught. They've been taught all their lives by listening to these other people as to what they think are right and not what we think is right. We have been taught our entire life kind of like to ignore ourselves, to ignore our inner voice. So that takes a lot of like patience, it takes a lot of compassion, and it takes a lot of work. Like, it's not just something that happens overnight. This is something that you keep having to intentionally work towards. Speaking from a personal standpoint, I did not have people in my life who consistently, took accountability for their actions, or who consistently tended to themselves. They were always in service of other people and giving to other people and not listening to their inner voice. So it's like having people who didn't even know the depth of themselves. How was I supposed to know how to do that for myself? So I never want to demonize anybody for not making that decision to do, the healing. It's very hard work, but I do feel it, like I said, at some point everybody wakes up. But I do feel as though that is where the distinction is made. The people who actually want to do the work and actually want to do the shadow work and go within the depths of themselves, and the people who are comfortable staying where they're at. And like I said, I can never judge anything from the outside. I only know my perspective of what I've gone through. But most of the time, a lot of these people just are not truly happy with where they are in life. And in order to, like I said, examine the reason why that might be, examine the ways in which you got to this point and why you're not changing, it takes work. So that is where shadow work comes in. So shadow work, essentially, like I said, if we're using the big umbrella term, it is doing the work required to meet the shadow aspects of yourself. So what are the shadow aspects of ourselves? And I made sure to grab the book today from my bookshelf, so I had it handy, How to Do the Work. Like I said, if you are not into spirituality and into the woo-woo stuff, this is a super good piece of literature in scientific terms as well, because she's a psychologist, in scientific terms, to help you understand all of this. But she does even speak about shadow aspects in a in a scientific way, in a non-spiritual way. I'm not going to bore y'all by thumbing through the pages here in the book, but to find it. But essentially, those shadow aspects of ourselves are the parts that we don't like about ourselves, that we actively know we are living out as these people or with these character traits, and we don't change them. So for example, I know in the spiritual awakening episode, I definitely spoke about the fact that I was a brat. Like, to be quite honest, in some ways, I am trying to get over it, but I was a brat. I wanted everything to go my way. I was also one of my personal shadow aspects. So I was a brat and I was selfish. I was also an introvert, and that was something that I didn't really like about myself. It wasn't until college. It actually wasn't even until, let's be real, until last year, until this year, 2023, that I really started to accept the fact, and I really started to love this part of me. But I was an introvert. That was a shadow aspect. I used to get jealous of other people. And another thing I will say is that when it comes to trying to figure out what your shadow aspects are in the first place, it is the parts of yourself. And you might not know, you might not be able to just pinpoint just yet, like, oh, I don't really like this part about myself. A lot of people will, because, we're only human. There are parts of ourselves that we don't like, but they are especially also the parts that we get jealous of other people for having or for not having. So like I said, for example, I was an introvert. I used to get jealous of people who would make friends so freaking easily and be able to go up and talk to anybody. I was never like that as a child. As an adult, I still find small talk hard. Like I said, because I'm a shadow worker, I want to get to the depths of your soul, you guys. But I understand small talk is essential. But my entire family, pretty much my entire family, we have struggled with weight. We have struggled with eating disorders over our entire life. It's no secret. I film my videos. A shadow aspect for myself used to be, and I'm still working on it until this day, and cultivating a positive self-image. But a shadow aspect for myself is that I did not like the fact that I was overweight, that I didn't look like the skinny model who was on the magazines and stuff. It is something, like I said, it's something I still grapple with till this day. And it takes a lot of work for me to like look in the mirror and be like, girl, this is your body. Not even for the fact as to how it looks, but how it functions, what it does for me. It keeps me alive. Like my joints, everything is okay. I got a little bit of asthma. And like I said, I'm overweight, but it doesn't stop me from being able to do anything. Anyway, like I said, all of these things take work. These are just a few examples of what my shadow aspects were. And like I said, I was jealous of other people for being skinny, for being able to eat any single thing that they wanted to eat and not feeling like you had to restrict yourself. But yeah, that's like another shadow aspect for me. So like I said, these are the parts of yourself that you don't like. It varies. These are the parts of you that you might have learned from other people, and some are just, they might be you. So for me, like I said, I'm introverted. I've been introverted since I was a child. And one of the ways that I reframe that for myself is thinking that, okay, like, I'm very conservative of who I give my energy towards, of who I interact with, of who I let into my energy field. That is something, that introverts tend to do. And, we're good at that more than other people. So those are ways that you can reframe that. But like I said, that's a core part of my being. A part that I picked up from family members and my environment is the fact that I don't like my body for the way that it looks. I never had, and I probably still do not in my entire family. I I never had a good example of what it meant to love my body and appreciate it for all the things that it does for me day in and day out. It digests my food and it protects me from being sick. It grows really nice hair. I'm able to do a lot of things. I'm able to freaking move and get out of bed and so many things that we take for granted. But the thing that was focused on so much when I was a child is the fact that we were overweight. So these are the things that we worried about as children. So that is something that I picked up. It was never mine to begin with, but these are mindsets and ways of living that I picked up from my family. So while doing the shadow work, I was forced to come face to face with these parts that I did not like about myself, with my shadow aspects. And, for shadow work, in terms of how one can start to engage in it, it really just is, like I said, the umbrella term being that you're meeting the shadow aspects of yourself, you're going into the depths of yourself, and most likely for a lot of us, meeting our real selves for the first time. A lot of us don't even know who our real selves are. And I was in that same predicament. I was like, who is my authentic self? What does real Krystal like to do? Like if somebody were to ask me, what is your favorite thing to do? If you didn't have to worry about how anybody felt, if you didn't have to worry about like how anybody viewed you, societal views, whatever, if you didn't have to worry about any of that, what would you do? What would you like to do as a profession? What would you like to do day to day? And I was like, if somebody asked me that, I would not know what to freaking say. So that one, that's really hard and that's strange. And for a lot of people, we are in the same boat. But, you get to meet yourself, like I said, a lot of people for the first time, and you just live and embody yourself authentically. And that's what shadow work helps us to do. So when we were meeting ourselves, in the spiritual community, a lot of us really just like journal. If anybody ever needs shadow work prompts to start on your journey, I have a bunch. I could also direct you to other shadow workers or other spiritual accounts that constantly post, some shadow work prompts. And it's really up to you as to which way you would like to explore these prompts, whether it's journaling. As I've said a million times in these podcasts, I do not like to journal. My mind moves a lot faster than the speed of my hand in writing. So I personally like to do voice recordings, or I like to type on my phone because it's a bit faster, or dictate, but anything pretty much with my voice. And, to be quite honest, I have not listened to a lot of my voice recordings in a while. If I'm ever feeling called to listen to a voice recording specifically, or I'm just like, oh, like, what did I even talk about in this day? Like, that's a sign that, most likely maybe you're closing out a cycle of something that you spoke about during that day. Maybe you're still repeating something, and that voice recording or that journal entry is kind of like encouraging you to start to break that cycle, or you see the ways in which, okay, this is who I was. this is me within the cycle. This is how I'm seeing. How can I use this particular entry? How can I learn from who I was at this moment to not repeat said cycle? So it's things like that. And it's really just up to you in the ways in which you engage in shadow work. For me personally, I also feel as though going to therapy, any sort of therapy, whether or not it's not talk therapy, it could be music therapy, it could be, like I said, any type of therapy. I also believe that that is shadow work. And like I said, it's just up to you, the ways in which you engage in it. I should also add that meditation is a form of shadow work because you're still silencing the world around you to really get in tune with not only yourself, but the divine, your God, your universe, whoever you believe in. It is an opportunity for you to meet yourself for the first time, I would have to say. And, I'm just talking about traditional meditation where you sit down, you might have some frequency going on and you just close your eyes and you just sit in silence. But if you know me, you know that I've spoken about it a million times in saying that meditation can come in any form. So not only is it the traditional way, it could be in a form, whatever brings you in a state of flow, I believe is a good form of meditation. And especially, not even just in a state of flow, but especially the ones that help bring out your inner child, I think are also important and I think are also very beneficial in shadow work and doing shadow work. So shadow work can be anything, just to recap that little section, because I always pretty much go on a tangent. But just to recap that little section, shadow work is meeting the depths of yourself. You can engage in shadow work in numerous different ways. The most traditional ways in the spiritual community of doing shadow work is with some prompts, whether or not you use a physical journal or a voice recording, that is up to you. But it is really just most of the time. Like I said, I also include therapy and meditation as a form of doing shadow work. But most of the time, these things are, self-initiated. They are self-guided. Of course, you can have a community in which you speak to and work through shadow work. I know a few different mystics who engage and who have communities where a lot of us can come together and discuss what we've gone over, to discuss, oh, I went through this thing as well. Here's some guidance for you. And I hope to have and foster a community with y'all on Patreon one of these days, but I will, baby steps right now. But yeah, most of the time it is self-guided. And for me personally, it could be a slippery slope, because for me personally, I do think that it is helpful to do it on your own, because a lot of this will take introspection and you really do want to black out the noise of any other people who have not even embarked on this journey yet. How are you telling me the correct way to heal myself, to do this shadow work, if you yourself aren't even engaging in this boo-boo? Like it doesn't work like that. Yeah, so it really should be on your own. I feel as though, and however long it takes you. For me, it took a good 2 years, really. And I was very fortunate. The pandemic wasn't anything good. So I do want to preface by saying that pandemic was terrible, but I was fortunate enough for the time that the pandemic caused us to take it for ourselves, with our families, alone, for everything to slow down. I was fortunate that I had my spiritual awakening then, so I had the time to do all of this. And I do have to also say, like, if you are having your spiritual awakening, but you are afraid of starting to do the shadow work, you are afraid of jumping into the abyss that is the unknown of yourself, of how you move on from this point right now, in which you don't like your life, in which you don't enjoy your life right now, and how you're supposed to change it, there's a lot of unknown there. And I know that the unknown is very scary. I understand in today's world where everybody's getting back to work and we have a job and all that stuff, that it might be hard to make time for it. But one thing about the universe is that once you've had your spiritual awakening and you realize you need to change things in your life, pretty much that's the catalyst right there. And whether or not you intentionally want to embark on it will make a world of a difference. Because like I said, if you're scared of that uncertainty between where you are now and where you want to be, where you envision your higher self, the universe is going to force you somehow, some way, and that is going to come in the form of tower moments. Something, again, known in the spiritual community, when somebody says a tower, that's referring to one of the tarot cards, I believe. Don't quote me on this. It might be card number 16. Actually, I could just look it up real quick, you guys. Okay, so the tower card. Oh, I was right. It is 16. Cool. Which is double 8, and 8 is a Scorpio number. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, in the spiritual community with the tarot card, it is number 16. It is the Tower card in tarot. When you have a tower moment, again, it's just like your foundation is crumbling. There are things, there are circumstances, there are events that might come in and happen to you that again like shows you where your foundation was rocky and knocks all that shit down. So it's just like if you are not taking the time to intentionally rebuild up that foundation to make sure that it is not shaky, and you continue to do the same things that led you to the shaky foundation in the first place, spirit is literally going to teach you the same lessons over and over, and that is what you see in a lot of people's lives. It is awful. Please don't do that. Really take the time. Like I said, you are divinely supported. If you ever need advice, if you ever need guidance from me, I am here. But the whole point of this journey as well is to listen to the advice of yourself, of your current self, of your higher self, of your spirit team or God or the universe. Like I said, whoever it is that you believe in, this is also the time that you should take to get to know them and to get to know the ways in which they support you. So this, it's all super important. That is what shadow work helps with in the first place. And I hope that everybody who even has an inkling that they are on their spiritual awakening, or they're about to have it, or they're just like, freaking straight in the middle of the eye of the hurricane. Shadow work is the next best step. And I will say that it is never ending at all, but it gets easier after, time after time. And I will also recommend, like I said, shadow work should be done by yourself pretty much for the first part, but also make sure that you have good support systems in place because, like we said, this shit is super fucking hard. Like, it is not easy by any means. And if you need to cry, if you need to release any sort of emotions, like, that is what this time is for. If you need to cry about the circumstances that got you to this point, like the point in which you don't really want to be at today, that is okay. It's okay to be angry. It is okay to be sad. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be furious. It's okay to be devastated. It's okay to be a human and to have human emotions. And it'll be even worse off for you guys if you're doing the shadow work and you're just like, oh man, like I really don't want to cry right now. I'm not in the mood to cry. Like I said, spirit, and I hate this saying. I hate when people say it currently. I hate it when it was said in my childhood. But for real, spirit will give you something to cry about. Like that is one thing. And I feel as though it's a little different for me because I am Saturn ruled. I'm an Aquarius. So it's just like sometimes I do have to learn the lessons the hard way because that is what Saturn is about. But once I learn them, like I do like get the rewards in the end, which is very appreciated. But try not to make those mistakes over and over because, like I said, they will give you something to cry about, unfortunately. But yeah, that is pretty much all that I have to say about shadow work. I would like to take this time now to direct your attention to the wonderful interview that I did with my mentor, Tania Bright. You guys have heard me, especially on my socials, on this podcast, just a little bit, but you've heard me speak a little bit about my mentorship program with her, and she has greatly helped me improve as a mystic, as a person as well. I will always say this, besides even providing me with the knowledge and with the guidance to scale my spiritual business, Tania has definitely brought in my soul tribe, people who I love interacting with and working with and supporting genuinely, and they love doing the same for me. So I'm super, super grateful for her and everything that she has done. She is inspirational and she is overall a great human being. So without further ado, I present to you that interview that I did with my mentor. Hey everyone, I am with the lovely Tania Bright. As you have seen on all of my socials, she is my mentor. I'm in her mentorship program. She has changed my life quite literally, and I can never stop giving her flowers and praising her. She's super awesome. I will let you introduce yourself, tell the people what you do. Yeah, just tell them about yourself.
So my name is Tina Bright. I have been running a online spiritual business for the last 3 years now. I've been studying occult science for 7 years now. I do astrology, tarot. I used to at least do astrology and tarot readings, but now we started to do mentorship, and that's how I met the amazing, lovely Krystal. And we've just been on this journey together, and it's been so fun. But yeah, that's what I do.
Thanks for sharing. So, the topic of this week's podcast is shadow work. One of my, honestly, it has become a personal favorite of mine. I feel like that's my Scorpio rising talking because I feel like if you ask a lot of other people, they're just like, nah, it's kind of sucks sometimes. But I do engage in shadow work pretty much every day. So, it's something that like I enjoy. It's something that I try to, kind of sprinkle it into other people's lives. A lot of my friends, a lot of my family are just not into spirituality at all. They're just like, this is very woo woo. Like, I don't know. So I definitely just try to sprinkle it in, like I said. So it's something very near and dear to my heart. I do think it's really important to engage in shadow work, whatever you want to call it, even if it's not shadow work. But it's very important to like keep that awareness about yourself, to keep revisiting certain situations, or to really sit with yourself and like think, okay, why did this trigger me? What can I learn from it? Before this, I spoke about in the podcast exactly what shadow work is, but yeah, I feel like now we could just talk about what are the different ways in which to engage in shadow work. So, Tania, like, what are your go-to ways to do it?
Yeah, so my go-to way, first of all, I need to be alone. I need to be
Mm-hmm.
alone. I think that alone time is so important because it allows you to kind of like decondition from just like your environment, the people around you. It allows you to kind of like get out the way of like other people's projections so that way you can just really like see yourself. And after or while I have my time alone, I really use that to pinpoint where the blockage started. Like I like to do like timeline stuff or like journaling or even just sitting there and just like, just asking myself certain questions and diving deep into my own psyche. That's like what that time is for. And then I think it's also really important to have like creative time after. Like we go into the shadow work and then we pinpoint the blockage and we let all of this shadow work come up for air. But then what do we do with that energy? We can't just leave it as is. You gotta, I like to think of it like there's like a little box inside of all of us, and that's like where our shadow work is. And we have to like open that box up and let it come up for air, let it come up for light.
Mm-hmm.
And but then you're not just going to leave that box, in your attic or in your heart or in your mind or whatever. You got to decorate it. You got to do something with it, turn it into something else, turn it into something beautiful. So that's kind of like my go-to process for shadow work. Alone time, reflection, and then creative time after. How
Yeah.
about you?
Oh, well, first of all, you taught me something new because I was like, it makes a lot of sense, that, when we're engaging, when we're going into the depths of ourselves, it makes a lot of sense kind of like to make sure that we bring the light back in. I personally never even like thought to do anything creative afterwards. So that's something new I will be trying. But for me, I've spoken about it with you, and y'all may know too, my audience, I've spoken about it like maybe briefly. I pretty much follow the same process that you do. A lot of the people that I follow on social media sometimes give a lot of good shadow work prompts too. So over the weeks and over the days, I kind of collect them. I have a little notes app in my phone. And sometimes when I'm just like, okay, when I want something structured, I'll visit those questions. But like I said, I kind of do it every day. I love alone time. I need to be alone. It needs to be a quiet environment, very Aquarius of me. I really value that alone time because it helps me to like I guess process any emotions that come up without judgment, with and like you said, without the projections of other people. I think that doing shadow work alone is important. Of course, do whatever works for y'all. But for me, journaling, I like journaling and I like, processing my feelings. But for me, my thoughts move way too fast for my hand to write. So I like to do it via my voice notes. So it's really helpful for me. Do I revisit them as often as I should? I don't, but I kind of use my intuition also. Like if I feel called to listen to a certain voice note, like I'm gonna do it. And I think that happened for me like a couple months ago, and I listened to it in full. It was probably like 25 minutes. And I listened, it was like an episode. And I listened to it, and for me, and then after that, I just saw so many signs. Like we spoke about it in your interview with me, and now I'm speaking about it. I always speak about it. And y'all already know I didn't have a job for 9 months, so that was a really hard and tough time for me. And so on the voice note, I was just like, yeah, it's really hard. Like, when am I gonna get a job? And I think, and like I said, the messages on social media and the synchronicities that preceded that was just telling me to, like, show more gratitude for the place that I am in now, because I literally prayed for times like this. And I think right before that is when, like, the day before I visited that particular voice note, and I was reminded, hey, be grateful that you're in this time right now. Is like, I got a new job right after that, so it was like a great thing to do for me. But yeah, that's pretty much the ways that I primarily engage in it. But I definitely, it's very heavy work, like you said, like it's a lot of
Yeah,
emotion, so I definitely need to incorporate some like creativity and just shedding light back into that when I do the shadow work. So yeah.
I love what you said about like going back to like your old voicemails or just basically going back to review the shadow work that you did.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done that in a while, but I do remember doing that many times, like earlier in the very, very beginning stages of my spiritual journey. I had a notebook where I would just brain dump all my negative thoughts. Like in my head, I was like, I'm going to get it out of my thoughts and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to put it onto that notebook and I'm going to close it up, throw it in the corner, and
Yeah.
we're not gonna have those thoughts anymore. And then, like maybe 2 years later, I go back and I look at that notebook and it's just like, whoa, like you just can see like the change in your mindset, the change in your brain. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's very confirming, it's very comforting. And it also just makes you realize like why you did that shadow work. Like it makes it worth it. You're like, I'm not at that place anymore
Yeah.
because I did all this shadow work. So I love that reminder of going back and like looking at the work you've done. And then especially during like retrograde season coming up, a lot of us probably will feel called, right, to go back and reflect like that. Yeah, I think that's a really healing tip
Mm-hmm.
right there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is great to see that growth. And I feel like shadow work is really, it's been an integral, I'll speak from a personal standpoint. It's been super integral to my growth as a person, to really
Yeah.
like have that awareness with myself, to, like I said in the beginning, to revisit or to even, I guess, examine like, okay, this triggered me. What can I learn from it? See how, I guess, like, how, in a way, I just, to sum it all up, just how to be a generational curse breaker, like to see the
Yeah.
patterns that are constantly repeating themselves in my family and even in the wider society. Like, there are a lot of people who live their life projecting onto you, unfortunately, the state of our world currently. But I
Yeah.
feel as though shadow work is very healing for that aspect of us, for realizing, like, okay, let's not take on these projected emotions, ideas, viewpoints, or whatever onto ourselves, and just learning how to be our authentic selves. So yeah, I think that that's super important. But in your opinion, like, why do you think shadow work is important and how has it affected your life?
Wow. I think shadow work is so, so, so important. I always tell people that if you don't control your shadow sides, they control you. Like if you
Yeah.
aren't in control of them, they're out here running your life, you're making decisions based on your shadow sides, and you're wondering why is nothing ever working out positively? Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're working from that shadow place. You're operating from that shadow place. So what you put out is what you get back, law of the universe. And wow, shadow work has completely changed my life. I know in the beginning stages of like my spiritual journey, shadow work was like a really scary thing to do because like facing yourself is a scary thing to do. And
Yeah.
I'm a Scorpio moon. We had shadow work to do.
Yeah.
So facing myself was not easy. And like even facing like what you said, the curses in your family is like an even bigger pill to swallow. You're
Mhm.
just like that moment of just waking up to your shadow is crazy. But then after that, it's like just this beautiful journey of like learning how to be better in control of yourself, learning to be better in control of your own chaos, learning to be better control then over your life because you're in better control of yourself.
Mhm.
You get better relationships out of it because you're no longer like just letting these blockages like come up. And I think that's really what shadow work is like, well, what is this blockage? What is this resistance?
Mhm.
Like you need to go in and like pinpoint that. And so it frees you. I think shadow work is something at the end of the day that frees you up, right?
Yeah.
And it starts, yeah, like big and scary. Then after that, it's not so bad. It's like just little maintenance stuff after that. And shadow work gets like faster and easier. But definitely I think in like the first maybe like year or two of your journey, like shadow work is the bulk of what you're doing, and it's probably really intense. That's how it's affected me, at least personally. It was really intense first couple years, and then after that it was like, I'm so glad I did that. I feel so much more free, and I
Mhm.
feel so much more like also just in aligned with like your true self. A lot of the shadow stuff you have might not be like your authentic self, you know what I mean? And so you can kind of like remove that, and you just start to feel more like yourself. You kind of come home to your body, you come home to your mind, you come home to your heart, and it's you can sit in it a lot more comfortably. Yeah, so I would say that's how it has affected me. How's it affected you? Curious.
I resonated with like so much that you said. Like literally, facing yourself can be really scary. For me, it was realizing that I was the villain in some other people's stories. Um, I honestly, I was the person who was blocking myself from like
Yeah.
progressing forward. So those are like really hard things to grapple with, honestly. And I will always say for anybody engaging in this journey, like I applaud you, I commend you because it's really hard. It is something that a lot of people are not cut out for, to be quite honest. I mean, everybody is. I do wish healing on everyone, but some people fold under pressure. And, hopefully your light can be the one, as you're healing yourself. That's not the end goal. The end goal is to heal ourselves. But also when it comes to, when we're in our families and around our friends, like it might happen that you help other people start their journey as well. But, the end goal is always for ourselves. But, anyways, I commend you. I applaud you. It's really hard. For me, I would say I would just echo the same thing. Like it's helped with my growth. It's helped me to be my authentic self. Like it's really, and I'm realizing this now, especially like I'm on a whole nother level with myself. I'm truly authentic. There might be like one or two things that like I'm a little hesitant to show other people, but for the most part, like I've just embraced who I am wholeheartedly. I'm about to like tear up. I have never met this part of myself, and y'all know I'm a softie. So everybody on the podcast knows I always cry. Um, like I've embraced this part of myself. I haven't seen her part like some parts in years since I was a child and some parts ever. So it's really been like, I don't know, like it's a journey for sure, but life changing to say the least. It's helped me. And like a lot of my other friends are just like, wow, like you really don't give a fuck about what other people are saying. I'm like, no, I do not.
Yes.
Really
Aquarius
embracing like
queen.
yeah, really embracing the positive side of my Aquarius energy for sure. And honestly just loving every second of it. And I definitely wouldn't have gotten here if I didn't like sit down and examine myself and like realize number one, like you said, the shadows, those were for me personally, those were defense mechanisms that I had built up over the years from protecting my authentic self because she got hurt by
Yeah.
like family, by friends, rejection most of the time. It was really just like learning to say, hey girl, like you are perfect the way that you are. The ways in which you acted out of those defense mechanisms weren't the best. So it was really just learning to forgive myself. If I
Yeah.
felt called to, asking others for forgiveness, but really just like evolving from there because that's all you can really do. You can grow, accept what happens. At the beginning of my journey, I accepted who I was in the moment. It's like, two truths can be true at the same time. I accepted myself for who I was. I knew that it wasn't the best, well, I still showed her love, but I also knew that it was time for a change. So I think just like keeping those things in mind is super important. But yeah, that's really how it's affected me. And I could go for days, talk for days about shadow work, but that's really how
Yeah.
it has impacted my life. And it's been like you said, very, very freeing. So yeah.
Yeah. I think a little like tough part that you might experience when you do shadow work is that too, like it could feel a little lonely, like
Mhm.
especially when you're like the only one working on their shadow, and everyone else is just operating from it and being there like, just unaware, maybe unhealthy like selves spiritually and mentally, and you're like trying to fix yourself spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. That could be tough when it's like you're the only one around doing shadow work.
Yeah, it can
So,
and is like, and I still kind of deal with that now, honestly. It's really hard, especially if you're around your family in person. I find a lot of
that's
comfort
tough.
um, being around my spiritual community that I have cultivated online with you, with the other mentees, with
Hmm.
the other like accounts that I follow, I feel validated and I feel comforted. But, at the end of the day, in person, it does feel kind of lonely, especially seeing, family members or friends that you know and love still kind of acting, like you said, from their shadows. But all you
Hmm.
can really do, unfortunately, is send them love and send them
Yeah.
vibes because you can't change everybody. They're going to want to change on their own time. You cannot force them. So
Yeah.
it's still a hard pill to swallow, but just learning to accept it.
Yeah, and you said it earlier, like all you could do is just like work on you and let your light shine, and
Hmm.
hopefully that, bleeds on to everybody else. Hopefully that inspires other people to like do the same. I would say that's probably one of the tougher sides of shadow work.
Very
Shadow
tough.
work is so like equally tough and rewarding. Like it's like I can't tell you if shadow work is hard or rewarding. It's
Yeah,
equally.
literally both. Definitely both.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have like any other tips or like anything that you'd want the collective to know about shadow work in general?
Yeah, definitely. One, I think it's important to know that we all like have parts of us that we don't like.
Mm,
We all have parts of us where it's a little shadowy, it's maybe not the healthiest, maybe it's a little toxic, maybe it's a little defensive, whatever it is. I think we all have a shadow side. So like, don't feel like you're a horrible person when
mhm.
you're doing shadow work. Like everyone's probably feeling like a horrible person as they're doing
Yeah.
shadow work. So I think it's important to be like gentle on yourself, and it's important to come up for air sometimes too.
Mm,
Like don't just like drown in the shadow work and drown in the spiritual work. Like it's okay to come up for air, turn that brain off and like have a little fun. And
yeah.
like I think you need that to like offset your shadow work too. You got to have some like I said, creative time or like some type of fun or just some type of rest period. It's really easy to kind of like just drown in that shadow work, drown in the guilt that comes up or like the doubt that comes up or like the lack of self-love that comes up when you're doing shadow work. Be mindful of that and don't fall for that trap. I think you just got to be gentle on yourself. It's easy to like be punishing too on yourself and be like I don't deserve things because of the shadow work you're doing, or to be like I'm not good enough, or I'm going to just self-sabotage because you're mad at yourself. And I think that's something to be like mindful of too. That's not going to help you heal. That's not going to
Mhm.
help you evolve. It's just probably going to throw you more and more into your shadow self. So I think it's important to like, yeah, come up for air. That would be my like number one tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And honestly, like after 3 years of me like really diving into my spiritual journey, I've just now, like probably in the past 4 months, like really started to understand how important that is. Because like you used to say, or like you said, and that I used to do, like I really used to do shadow work. And I was like, okay, these are heavy emotions. How am I moving them out of my body? Like, am I giving myself some respite from dealing with all of this all the time? Disclaimer, I was not. So I do think that that is super important. And I didn't realize it's important until this year. So definitely y'all should get on that.
Yeah. I think another tip too, like when I was like in the very like beginning stages of like, my spiritual journey, I kind of felt like you only have to do shadow work like one time, right? And then we're done and then we can move on and we should be fine. Like, no, you will probably always have to do shadow work because you're always changing and you're always evolving,
Mm-hmm.
and you might take on new, blockages and defense mechanisms and toxic traits, and then you're just gonna have to like spring clean that out. Like it's a maintenance thing for sure. It's a
Yeah.
maintenance thing. But yeah, I think that would definitely be that tip. Don't go into it thinking you're gonna do the shadow work one time and you'll be fine forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I somewhat had that expectation. So I agree. And kind of in the same vein, like, also don't put like timing on how fast you're supposed to be healing. Like, please don't do that. I don't think I ever personally did that, but I've seen a lot of people that were just like, yeah, I should have been gotten over this. Oh, I guess I did do that. I guess like in terms of like romantic breakups, but not necessarily in terms of shadow work, which, they kind of go hand in hand. But anyways, putting a time limit on it, like, oh yeah, I was supposed to be over that, or why is it still affecting me? Just first of all, show yourself grace, because those are your emotions and your emotions are valid. There is no set way or set time for any one person to heal whatever it is that you're going through. It's all uniquely like, unique to us, what we're going through. So your timing is going to be unique. Don't compare it to other
Mhm.
people. I think is like super important too.
Yeah, I like that for sure. It's definitely like, insane the kind of like expectations we could put on ourselves when it comes to
Mm,
healing and like manifesting. And you could just see that like instant gratification just creeping in, like
yeah.
that we have to be mindful of. It's not our fault, it's the way our society is set up. We're so used to that instant gratification, but spirituality does not work on that timeline. It does not. I have like a question for you, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Maybe what's like a really positive experience or just like side of shadow work that, you would bring up, just like something that positive that comes out of it.
I would say, I mean, there was actually a lot of stuff, but something that I am like immensely proud of, something that I've struggled with
Yeah.
my entire life, and I actually just spoke about on today's episode of the
Yeah.
podcast, is that with my family, like emotions weren't readily expressed. Like there weren't something that were easily expressed. And honestly, the only emotion that I saw in my house was like anger and frustration. So when it came to me, an empath as a child, a highly sensitive person, I've been this way my entire life. I didn't really know it until I got older. But as an empath, as a person who just felt things so deeply, like if I was upset, I kind of feel like they were amplified. So then couple that with a family, I had one parent who just like, if any emotions arose, it was just shut down. And another parent that's just like, when expressing his emotions, like just was yelling all the time. So I didn't have a good example of what it meant to healthily express my emotions. So for me, I always struggled in friendships with my family, of course, and especially in my romantic relationship, like it was very hard for me to express myself. It was hard for me to speak up and say, hey, this bothered me. I would shut down. So that was like a really tough time for me. But something that I have seen immense improvement with myself that I'm really proud of is the fact that I am able to speak up, even if like tears stream down my face. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like that quote that, like your voice may shake when you speak, but speak anyway. Like it's still important that your
Love
voice
that.
is heard. So I keep that in mind all the time, because my emotions are valid. Whatever I'm feeling is valid, and I am now in a safe place because I did my shadow work, because I like really helped my inner child and healed her and said like, hey, it's okay. Like your emotions are valid. You're able to
Yeah.
express yourself. Your opinion matters, your voice matters. And just really healing that part of myself like has been great, because now with my friendships, I can work through conflict a lot easier. I was definitely conflict avoidant, just like my one of my parents. I would shut down if presented with anything other than like, happiness or excitement or something. Like the hard emotions, I would shut down. So now I don't do that. There are times, and I spoke about it also today, like where I feel it in my body. I'm always going to feel it in my body. I feel it at this point. It's like it's like a childhood response, in that I felt unsafe, and so my body would tense up. Like everything tenses up, and I feel it. But in the moment, I really like, in my head, I'm like, okay, you're safe. Let's take a breath. Say whatever it is you want to say, even if, tears stream down your face or your voice shakes. So that's been really nice for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder of how like shadow work holds the keys to your personal power.
Mm,
Like you don't get your to unlock your personal power unless you do the shadow work. Like that is the path right there.
yeah.
Personal power. And that's why you do it. You do it to heal, you do it to achieve that personal power and to unblock yourself too. Do you think it's like possible to achieve your personal power without shadow work?
Phew, I don't
Right?
think so.
Interesting.
No, I really don't think so, because,
Yeah.
part of what shadow work entails is having that awareness in a general sense, but like really deep self-awareness. Like, and like I said
Yeah.
at the beginning, like as to the ways in which you're holding yourself back and the ways that you might be self-sabotaging whatever it is that it might be. I think that's super and a super important aspect of it. So really without shadow work, I don't think you can get to your full potential. You might feel as though it's good, but like the world around you might still not be ideal. You know, you might still struggle a little bit. You might feel as though you have a day that's just like, oh, I just, or you constantly feel as though you have bad luck. At some point, like, let's be real, when is it really bad luck versus you needing to change the actions that you do or the mindset that you have? Like, you know, these,
Right.
that's what shadow work helps you to uncover and to
Yeah.
fix, but like work through it and heal and make it a little better.
Right. It's like, are all men really like not shit, or are you just picking ancient men? Right? Like at
Yeah,
what
that's a perfect example.
yeah. I love that. Like at what point is it us? Are we the problem? Are we the villain? Like you said, right? I know. I think we've all
Exactly.
been the villain. If you have never been the villain, I think you are Delulu a little bit, just a little
Seriously,
bit.
no, I
You've
definitely
never
agree.
been.
But I think that that's super important. But
Yeah.
as a last question, I would like to echo what you asked me back to you, which was like, you know, how has it helped you? Or like, what's one positive thing that has come out of doing shadow work? Or not even just one, you know, it could be a bunch, but whatever you want.
Yeah, I think one of the best skills that came out of shadow work for me was setting boundaries for
Mm,
sure. It's kind of a little similar to what you said, but yeah, I kind of grew up in a family where boundaries were not a thing, not a thing. If my mom wanted to walk into my room, she's walking in, she's not knocking, she don't care. Like boundaries were just not a thing. And so I didn't even realize how much that affected my life, like the whole lack of boundaries thing, how much that affected everything in my life, like work, relationships, the way I just operate and move through life. So doing that shadow work and acquiring that skill of being able to set boundaries has just changed the game for me. And now I actually feel like I can take care of myself. Like shadow work teaches you how to properly, I think, nurture and take care of yourself. And so that is the most powerful thing I got from my shadow work is the ability to be like, this is my boundary, like I'm not gonna do it, or this is my boundary, and like you can't just walk in, whenever you want. Like
mhm.
that's a game changer for me. That I think was like the gateway to like personal power for me. After that, it was like just so easy to do the rest of the shadow work, if that makes sense. Like once
Yeah.
I learned to set boundaries, everything else, like maybe like speaking up, or everything else, like, maybe like apologizing or doing whatever I need to do to continue my shadow work journey was just easier after
Mhm.
that lesson. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing for me.
Thank you for your time and thank you for just telling the audience about shadow work and about your opinion. But I feel like shadow work is definitely something that's like vulnerable. And even talking about it for me, like, you know, I got vulnerable. I was tearing up. It is a vulnerable experience, but I definitely just want the people to know that you're not alone in this, that you're supported by the universe always. But definitely make it a point to, you know, like I said, I've built my little community online. Really love and appreciate all the insight and the guidance and support that they're constantly giving. But also, part of shadow work too is creating that for yourself. I feel like
Yeah.
that's another thing that's come out of it for me. Like, you know, if I'm going through a tough time, it's like, it's not like, oh, girl, like, why are you going through this? And that's my personal, you know, childhood trauma right there. It's like, no, you're allowed to work through your emotions. You're allowed to have them. It's a hard journey for sure. It takes time, but just know you're always supported. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of courage too. Like you
Mhm.
may feel vulnerable, but you are so powerful, actually. Like you are so powerful for going in there and doing that shadow work. And you're
Yeah.
brave as heck too.
Yeah.
So
There
it
is.
feels a little vulnerable. It's not a vulnerable, like you are probably stronger than you'll ever be. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or stronger than you ever were in that moment just by doing that shadow work. It's
Yeah.
just that interesting, like contradiction almost of how like that feeling of being vulnerable is what it feels like to unlock your personal power.
Yeah,
Isn't
it is
that
actually,
ironic?
yeah, I must say it's like super strange. It's a feeling that is so unfamiliar, and especially in today's world, like I'm echoing what you said, especially in today's world where so many people wear false masks, like being vulnerable and owning your like every single part of yourself is just
Mhm.
that's how you unlock your power for sure.
Mhm.
I think it's so
Mhm.
important.
that I think is how you unlock like self-love too, like true self-love, true self-respect as well, is by like owning and embracing and working on all parts of you, even the parts that you don't want to take a look at, the parts of us that we want to just ignore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have anything else before we end?
Um, I just would like to wish the audience the best of luck on their journey. And I just would want them to know they're not alone. Like the spiritual community is massive and it's growing forever. It like grows every day. So
Yeah.
there's so many people out here to talk to about, stuff like this. And I think your podcast is so awesome for giving people that space to have that discussion and to listen in on these kinds of discussions. What you're doing is fucking awesome. Can we say fucking? I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that. It's
No,
freaking me
yeah,
out.
yeah. I curse all the time.
Okay.
And thank you. And like I said at the very beginning, honestly, without this mentorship program, like I wouldn't have found my voice for the podcast specifically. I had my voice before that, but I appreciate everything that you do for the community,
Yeah.
and in passing down that knowledge and that wisdom and guidance to me so that we can both give it to the rest of the community. It's been really great. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate whoever is watching slash listening to this. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, guys. So I hope that you enjoyed that interview with Tania. I am hoping to bring her back on a lot more of these spiritual subjects that I will be talking about. But that was our conversation and our take on shadow work. I hope that today's episode was beneficial to you. And like I said, if you ever have any questions, hit me up in the little Q&A section down below. You can DM me in my socials. You can email me. My email should be in my Instagram as well as my TikTok maybe. But yeah, I do think shadow work is so transformational and important, especially for everybody, of course, and especially if you are on the spiritual journey, especially if you've had your awakening already. This is not something you should shy away from. It is a way to just prompt and be a catalyst for you finding your inner power as well, your inner strength, your inner voice that has been suppressed for so long. This is what shadow work helps with. It is so liberating and freeing, and I truly hope that you all have the experience to experience this one day. It does help to build resilience in us and just set us up for the life that we've dreamt of. Like my mentor always says, these are not our dreams anymore. We're making this into a reality. And shadow work helps to set the foundation for you to skyrocket. So, yeah, I will always, always, always be on the side of shadow work. I'm always going to say that shit is fucking hard, but you guys are absolutely capable of doing it. And we are here to support you as well on this journey. So, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like, comment, subscribe, give your insight into how you engage in shadow work. And thanks as always if you've made it to the end. I absolutely heart hands. Okay, the heart hands emoji is my favorite. But heart hands, I really do appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.